Now is a good time for people to turn off your cell phone for the evening. Unless you're Miriam, we might need to call on your cell phone later. And now is also a good time to make sure you have whatever you need to be comfortable for our time together, to be comfortable for this evening's practice. So I want to first just ask, how's the sound? You way in the back. Yeah? Okay, good.
Louder, please.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
And I just want to take a look around. Yesterday we had a beautiful day-long retreat here, but it's been a long time since I've been here at Against the Stream, having moved to the far, far away land of North Carolina some months ago. So I'm no longer in Ojai. I'm really happy to be back here with you tonight. I see a lot of new faces, and I also see a lot of folks I've known for some time. So welcome back. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Eden. I come from the Zen tradition. And this evening's practice and talk will be on the topic of fearless love, the heart of relational mindfulness. And I'll be drawing tonight upon some teachings in a new book that I just had come out. And it's so pretty, I'm going to share the cover. So it's called Relational Mindfulness, a handbook for deepening our connection with ourself, each other, and our planet. And I feel like it's really important medicine for our planet right now because there is such a tear in the realm of human relationship, in the fabric of relationship. And there is so much divisiveness, reactivity, othering, violence, disconnect. So I offer this evening in the spirit of helping us to remember our inherent connection, our interconnection, helping us to remember who we really are. Okay? And just before we get started, I'd love to look out and get a sense of, is anyone brand new to practice? Can you raise your hand if you are? We have a whole room of seasoned meditators. And is anyone new to Against the Stream tonight? Thank you all so much for being here. Okay? So let's welcome beginner's mind, the most helpful thing we can bring to our practice, even if we've been meditating for a very long time. And I invite everyone to turn your attention within. So we'll guide us first in a centering and then into our meditation. So just where you are, please begin by allowing your eyes to rest closed. And let's start by taking in a few deep, conscious, full body breaths together. Just feeling the air as it enters your body, fills your body, and leaves your body. With your next inhalation, please take a moment to acknowledge what it took for you to get here this evening. Whether you drove through traffic or rode your bike or came with friends, just to acknowledge your journey here and to appreciate yourself for prioritizing deepening practice, for being here. With your next inhalation, I invite you to simply begin to arrive. To allow yourself to let go of whatever conversation you were just engaged in. To let go of any sense of expectation or pressure. Maybe noticing residue from your day and allowing your body to soften. Maybe noticing if you came into this space with any extra tension or holding in your body. And just inviting yourself to let it go. And with this next breath, just allowing yourself to be here. Feeling the touch of air on your skin. Noticing the sounds surrounding us. Being aware of your relationship with gravity. Seeing if you can allow the field of gravity to hold you, to meet you here. And as you allow your breath now to return to its natural rhythm, simply notice what that is this evening. Allowing your breath to serve as an anchor. Just resting your attention with the simple rhythm of your breath. As you settle into spacious awareness. Allowing your breath to anchor you, and whenever you notice your attention being pulled away by sensation, story, emotion, gently but firmly bring your full attention back to your breath. Nothing to do, nothing to strive for, nowhere to get to, nothing to make happen. honoring the practice of turning towards rather than away from our experience. Turning towards rather than away from life. Just noticing what is here for you this evening in the mirror of stillness. And being willing to be with, to welcome whatever is here. To allow whatever feelings might be here to move through you, to be permeable to feeling. This evening's practice is dedicated to the topic of fearless love. And as you meditate, I'll just invite you to hold in your awareness some words from Rilke on love. And he says, love consists of this, two solitudes that meet, protect, and greet one another. And so within ourself, and in order to cultivate a compassionate relationship with ourself, which comes first, are we willing to meet ourself in solitude? Are we willing to deeply know ourselves in solitude? Are we courageous enough to give ourselves the gift of solitude, stillness, spaciousness, an invitation to go beyond the conditioned mind, an invitation to be with our naked experience as it is. Remembering that there's nothing to do, nothing to fix or change or solve, nowhere to get to, nothing to strive for. Just allowing yourself to be here, exactly as you are, exactly as life is. Remembering that peace, interconnection, love, we could say. This is what's here when we stop doing everything else. And so in meditation, we have an opportunity to see clearly the everything else that we get caught in, that we give our attention to sometimes. The quality of our life experience is determined by the focus of our attention. And so in this practice, we're training our attention to rest here in this moment where life is actually happening, rather than letting our attention, which is like our currency, be usurped by the mind of separation. The habit patterns of the mind of separation cause great disconnect, separating us from our own self, our true self, separating us from one another, separating us from the natural world, the greater world we live in. And so in practice, we're compassionately and with commitment training ourselves to come back home, to remember who we really are. This field of interconnection that we never leave, this field of love that we never leave. Actually, it never leaves us, we can say, but we regularly depart from it by giving our attention to the mind of separation. So I invite you now to deepen your breath. Just feeling the air as it moves through your body. And as we begin to bring our meditation to a close, reflect on a question. Today, how have you experienced interconnection? How have you been reminded of our inherent interconnection? You might also reflect on how have you been pulled into separation? How have you been seduced, either by your mind into a sense of disconnect within, or perhaps felt disconnect with others? Just reflecting on your experience for a moment. Okay, everyone, for the next few minutes, we'll continue with a relational meditation. So I would like to ask each and every one of you to turn and find a partner, someone next to you. Just turn towards the person next to you. And in a moment I'll ask anyone who does not yet have a partner to raise your hand. Any other partnerless meditators? You and you in the back, partners? Anyone over here still needing a partner? You can come up here and be my partner as long as someone will assure me that what we share will not necessarily be captured on film. Because the rest of you have confidentiality right now. I want my partner to as well. So how does it work? Okay, you know what we'll do? Group of 3. That's what you're going to be part of, right there. So, do you have a partner as well? It does not matter. Okay? So I'm going to invite each and every one of us right now to pause and close your eyes. To connect with your breath. So part of relational practice is about remembering our capacity to deeply listen. Meditation itself is the practice of listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment. That's what we're doing here on the cushion. So can we learn how to more deeply attune and listen to one another? Can we learn how to more deeply listen within ourselves? There is no separation. And I'm going to ask you for this exercise simply to, just like on the cushion, bring beginner's mind, bring curiosity to having whatever experience you have. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And in a moment, let's see. Well, let me first ask, can the partner with the longest hair please raise your hand? Okay, long hair person, you will go first. And what I'll have you do is just take a moment to share with your partner about the questions I asked you to reflect on. What is a way that just today you experienced interconnection, you were really reminded of, or you felt you got to fully embody that experience of interconnection? Perhaps not. What's a way you experienced separation, distance? How perhaps today even has your mind pulled you away from presence and the field of connection? So you can reflect on either of those two things to your partner for just a few minutes while your partner simply listens. So not asking any questions, not adding comments, giving your full attention to the person who's speaking. And so I'm just going to say one more thing about this. Attention is what we're cultivating in practice, learning how to rest our attention in presence, in this moment. That's where our life is. And life is fleeting, okay? So we want our attention to be here, at home. Attention is also the most subtle form of love. So when we give our attention to someone else fully, we're actually offering love in that moment. You with me? Okay, any questions before we begin? So I'll ring a bell in between when it's time to switch, and I'll give you 3 a special sign when it's time to switch. Okay? Okay, so remember, just listening and noticing your experience as you engage in this non-habitual way. Just noticing whether it's comfortable, uncomfortable, joyful, strange. Please begin.
What's the question again?
The people I know who might be looking at us talking, but I always think it's kind of cautious. I don't really know this person. It's not selfish. You want to be helpful. Like I know one person in another place, but I know that that person is a very good chance. explain the work that's going to do this, I know cover the share. There's that very separation down very conscious of that. Where I'd like to be friendly with the people when it comes to your own space. Some place you can realize what you want it to be, right, and you're there. Get the haircut the most we have. I mean, we have a shorter time frame.
So if everyone can pause and close your eyes where you are, bringing the conversation to a pause, closing your eyes and looking within. Just taking in a deep breath, eyes closed, and noticing your internal experience. Noticing what's happening in your body right now. Noticing any feelings, any emotion, any self-talk, anything you might be saying to yourself about this. And now beginning to get ready to switch. Groups of 3, you have a shorter share, of course. So now we'll switch to the next person, and the listener will just listen. Nothing to do but listen. And if someone is done talking, then you sit together in silence and notice, what is it like to engage with one another without words? Begin. So pausing again, closing your eyes, turning your attention within. just pausing and noticing the internal landscape. How is it to stay connected within ourselves as we engage with one another in this way? Just noticing for a moment what it was like to be listened to listen, perhaps to engage with a stranger. So gently opening your eyes now, thanking your partner, and returning to your place. Okay, so bringing your full attention back here, and I invite everyone to really remain in the spirit of deep listening, of just listening. While we continue, this evening will include a Dharma talk and some interactive work. So just take a moment to get comfortable in your chair, turning your attention to just taking in sound, okay? Aware of your receptive body, aware of the receptivity of just listening, okay? And before we dive in, I'll just share that I truly love teaching, and I truly don't love cameras. And so it's just funny because, especially since my book has come out, everyone wants me to get in front of a camera. So I'm willing. I'm always willing in my practice. But it's a bit awkward because not only do we have this, but I told my publisher I would try to film a short segment here, and me and this thing are really confused together. So let's just say I might call on you, Miriam, at some point to come over and kind of close in, because I don't have a mic with me, to just kind of film a short segment. Okay? Thanks. So I'm curious. I'd like to hear from you first. What did you notice in that way of engaging? What did you notice about listening or being listened to? What did you notice about those questions around connection and disconnect? Yeah, and can you share your name?
Yes, my name is Paula.
Thank you.
And what I noticed is, am I going to talk to my friend, or am I going to turn around and talk to a stranger? So I thought about it, and I felt so comfortable from meditating that I preferred to talk to my friend because I know her and I want to stay in a comfort level. And then by disconnecting, when we talked about that, I thought of a peaceful sunset, and it really, I'm still in that state of mind, so I understand what you did. You're trying to get us to stay in this state of mind while we have a conversation. And it's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So a couple of things I want to just underline about what you shared. You shared how you were so in the comfort. You had a peaceful meditation, and you kind of wanted to protect, to stay in that space. So you chose a friend, someone you know already, to engage with. And you did get to experience peace in your connection. I find it fascinating how, for meditators, often there's some point in our practice where we have this duality that begins. I get to experience this deep sense of peace on retreat, or on the cushion when it's just me and present moment awareness, or in these certain contexts where I now know I can access peace. We develop a very conditional relationship with peace. Over here, or with these people who I love and know, but not over here. Raise your hand if you know that one. Yeah? So we come off retreat, and it's like, well, then how am I going to maintain this quality of presence, this depth of presence at work, or in conflict, or in the dating world, or whatever it is? And so part of the purpose of relational mindfulness is to assure us, to support us, to encourage us, to let go of that duality, to remember that peace is not meant to be conditional. Loving presence is not meant to be conditional. It's our birthright, that we access it inside, the solitude, the refuge, the quality of presence that comes from spacious awareness and nothing else, and that we learn how to trust our capacity to bring that into all of our life, into all of our interactions, certainly into the relational field. And so a little bit tonight we'll touch on some of the things that get in the way. Fear is certainly one of the things that gets in the way. but I appreciate your sharing. Thank you. Who else? What's something you experienced? Yeah, your name.
Juan.
Thanks, Juan.
I think I just noted that for the three of us in our group, it seemed that the first thing that came to mind was more likely to be a situation of separation, some condition in the outer world that we have to deal with, and then the duality kicks in, and you feel it's necessary because you're either you're either looking for a new housemate, or you're dealing with a housemate that's currently there, or a father-son situation, and that's duality is inevitable in those situations because you feel that you either have to, you're trying to improve the situation in one relationship, you're trying to protect the space that you have, or learn to live with another. That's patterns are very different.
So part of what I hear you saying is, in the conversation that your group had, you noticed the first thing each of you talked about was an area of separation, of difficulty or conflict that you're navigating in your life, that you're trying to bring your practice to, and that's what came up for each of you. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how many people here right now are dealing with some kind of schism in the relational field or some kind of practice opportunity related to relationship? Raise your hand. Yeah, actually, it would actually be everyone, because every relationship that we have in life begins with our relationship with ourself, and we are either embodying a compassionate or adversarial relationship with ourself. That's the bottom line. Practice helps to reveal to us and allows us to become clearer seers in the ways that there's an adversarial relationship still going on. And as we look out into our world at what's happening, we do not have to look far to see adversarial relationship being modeled, being taught, being passed down everywhere we look. Yeah? So we have an incredible opportunity as meditators, as people who have come to practice, to cultivate something different, to remember what's true beyond the distortion. Okay? Who else? Anyone else want to share? Yes, your name.
Colleen.
Thanks.
I noticed that when it was my turn to listen, it was sort of a joy and a relief not to have anything else to do, but just to focus on hearing and feeling with what my partner was telling me.
So you noticed that the invitation to just listen felt really enjoyable. What a relief to not have anything else to do, but you said feel with and be with, to take in the other. Yes? And how many people in this room had that experience, or generally have that experience of listening, of really listening? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So deep listening is the essence of relational mindfulness, as I believe it's the foundation of meditation. To listen, the root comes from to obey. And so in any moment of our life, we're either obeying the conditioned mind, we're either giving our attention to, and thus obeying, believing, following, letting ourselves be guided by the mind of separation, really. It's stories, it's made-up assessments and judgments and dramas and measurements and comparisons and conditioned beliefs that come from society, that come from religion, that come from past traumas. We are letting ourselves be guided by that, really? Or we're learning how to deep listen. And that means we can listen to the moment in presence. This can certainly be here, superficial thought. It is sometimes, right? Sometimes it's really loud. It tends to be very repetitive. But when we're practicing deep listening, when we're really present, when we get here, we don't have to be obeying it. We can be obeying the heart. We can be listening to and thus receiving deeper guidance. We can be aware of our natural feedback system and what's actually going on rather than just what we're being told about life. People know what I'm pointing to? When I speak of the mind of separation, does everyone have a sense of what I'm speaking to there? Would anyone like further description? Raise your hand. Okay, that helps me. So the mind of separation, which I could also point to as the conditioned mind, the habitual, superficial thought, which carries judgment, assessment, story, drama, certainly fear, past, future, focus. This is the conditioned mind. I call it the mind of separation because it so clearly causes disconnect. It separates us from our actual experience. We can be here just sitting on the cushion, nothing going on, and yet the mind can create a whole story about some sensation that's happening in our body or some look that's on someone's face or whatever it is, right? It certainly causes disconnect between us as humans, because I can be listening to you, but I'm really listening to the conversation in my head about what I'm going to say when it's my turn, or what I'm thinking about you, or what I want to cook for dinner when I get home, whatever it is, yeah? And it also disconnects us from the world around us, because we're not actually available for our natural attunement, okay? So I feel like it's important to just lay that out at the beginning of this talk, and to remind us that in practice, as I shared in our meditation, the quality of our life experience is determined by the focus of our attention. It's pretty simple. The quality of our life experience is determined by the focus of our attention. And so we meditate, we show up to learn, to remember how to focus our attention here, how to actually be here fully with what is, rather than needing to lean on, needing to turn to this separate self. This is also what we could point to as ego, self-consciousness, okay? It's always standing outside of life, assessing what is, whereas we're living life. Does that make sense to people? So it's important to kind of get that delineation. I want to first ask if there's anyone else who wants to share just about listening or being listened to before we move on. So I'm going to take a look around.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Paula again.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, do you think it's better to separate your mind by, instead of thinking, keep being drawn into thoughts and stuff that you're thinking about, like to picture a scenery, maybe like of the ocean?
Thank you for that question. I'll talk more about this as we go, but I really encourage that people, just as in meditation, have an anchor that you can return to. So breath, perhaps, in meditation. When we're practicing relational mindfulness, just listening in itself is a meditation. You talked about listening feeling very relieving and relaxing, just giving your full attention to taking in the other, to listening, okay? So that we can allow our meditation to create an unconditional quality of presence. Not, I can be present here in these situations when I'm comfortable, or these situations when I'm with people I like, or these situations when I'm in nature. Can we just quickly have people call out what are the places or situations where you kind of let yourself experience that conditional piece? Can a few of you call those out? Doing laundry. I've never heard someone call that one out, but it's great, and I agree. In the back?
The ocean.
The ocean. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Hiking.
Hiking. Mm-hmm.
Washing dishes.
Washing dishes. Okay.
I used to practice Aikido in the
Practicing,
practice.
doing a physical practice. Yeah. Anyone else in back?
Walking your dog.
Okay. Okay. So these places where we tend to allow ourselves to taste peace. And if I ask you to make a list of the places where you don't allow yourself, or you have a belief that says peace is not possible here, it would probably be fairly long. Does that feel so to you? Yeah. So this is what I'm asking you to consider. How generous we're willing to be with ourselves, and how honest we're willing to be with ourselves about these kinds of dualities we've created. Here, but not here, okay? So as I continue to talk right now, I just want to bring up again this saying by Rilke that I shared in our meditation. And it is, love consists of this: two solitudes that meet, protect, and greet one another. In this talk, I'm not necessarily talking about love with another or just partnership. That's one form of love. I'll remind us that every aspect of love begins with this relationship internally. So in our relationship with ourself or with one another, how often are we habitually meeting each other not from that place of solitude, not from that place of presence, just being as we are, just sharing ourselves as we really are, just sharing ourselves without efforting, without guarding, without performing, but actually meeting ourselves from our solitude, okay? When I talk of solitude, let me just ask, do you need the volume higher?
Yeah, could you repeat how you started this?
Sure, I'll repeat that quote in just a moment. Yeah. But when I'm talking about solitude right now, I'm talking about the spaciousness within. Okay, so how many of you, just in your meditation tonight, or when you have a deep practice, get to palpably taste the spaciousness within? Okay, so what we're learning how to do is pause from our kind of a habitual turning towards separate self and let ourselves just relax. I know it's hard sometimes. There's a lot of people not relaxing around us. There's a really busy and trauma-filled city around us. And let ourselves drop in to spacious awareness, spacious presence. The image that comes would be the ocean. On the surface of the ocean, there's really choppy waters, quickly moving tide, okay, crashing waves. You don't have to change that. You don't have to push it away. There's nothing we have to do about it. But if we allow our attention to sink much deeper towards the bottom of the ocean, then even with those surface waters crashing, there's a calm, okay? There's a different quality. The quote that I had said was, love consists of this: to meet, protect, and greet one another in solitude. Okay? So just as I'm talking, turn your attention to your breath. Close your eyes. And just notice what's moving through you right now. There are 9 principles for relational mindfulness. And the first one is intention. So just with your eyes closed right now, checking in with your intention for practicing, your intention for being here tonight. And if we checked in each morning, and certainly each time we prepared to engage with another human being with our deeper intention, we might be able to more clearly see the opportunity to use the human field of relationship to support one another in waking up and remembering who we are rather than forgetting. The second principle is the mindful pause. So just with your eyes closed right now, in this moment of pause, take in a deep breath. And just notice what's happening in your mind right now. What's happening in your emotional body? And what are you aware of in your physical body? Whether it's enjoyable or difficult, can you bring curiosity and openness to what's moving through you. And if you can trust that it's easier than you think to pause before and while engaging with others, to be more aware of the internal landscape. And we get to be more in touch with our own presence. I would use the word solitude, our own internal solitude, while we interact. Just a little less likely to get caught instead in a battle of separate self with the other. The next principle for relational practice is deep listening. And I've already invited you into deep listening tonight. But just now, where you are, I'd like you to tune in again, just to the quality of receptivity that just listening requires of you. Nothing to do, nothing to solve, nothing to make happen. The mind of separation tends to carry 3 major messages. And the first is that there's something wrong. So we're going along and it's just kind of there pointing out, there's something wrong, okay, with you, or with them, or with the world. And the second major message it points out is that there's not enough. Maybe time, maybe money, resources, love, but it's there to make sure you know that there's not enough. Maybe that you're not enough. That's pretty pervasive in our culture. And the third is that there's something you've got to do. There's something you've got to do right now, even just when you're meditating. So even when we're with another person, oftentimes it's difficult to just be there and really receive them, to just be there and offer our pure presence, because our mind is talking us into doing or trying to solve or wanting to be helpful, when really the biggest service we could offer, I would suggest, in any situation, is deep listening. Just to listen, just to be with and feel with another. And depending on whatever we're going through in life, to be with and feel with ourselves. Okay? The next principle for relational practice is transparency. And transparency is really important because it's asking us to, as we learn how to deeply listen to ourselves, it's helping us to access, I would say, our true voice and to actually speak to the world from that voice, to actually speak our truth, to actually be willing to be vulnerable and say what is so for us, to actually take down the masks, not some of the masks, but why not all of the masks, and just let our true self speak more. So oftentimes when people go on retreat, they experience this very deep relief in getting more in touch with their essence, with just what's here in stillness and non-doing, with just what's here kind of beyond some of the roles you play and some of the busyness that life might ask or demand of you. And then people kind of feel like going back into the world. I can't just engage from that essence. I have to put some masks back on, okay? Or I have to perform again. And so transparency is about, and you can check within yourself right now and just ask yourself, where am I practicing transparency in my life? I'd be curious just to see a show of hands. How many of you already have that as an active practice? Something that you're engaging in, even though you know it's not always easy, right? Sometimes it's really not clear. What does it mean to bring transparency to this situation? What does it mean to speak my truth here? It's not clear in this conflict, perhaps, okay? But I like the reminder that truth-telling is like oxygen. It's like oxygen. It's something we all really need to survive. And at least for me, I grew up in Los Angeles, where I was very aware of a subtle level of distortion all around me. In the billboards I saw every day walking down the street, and the messages in the media, and sometimes ways adults talk to me as a young person, and in all of it, there's just this kind of disturbing smell of distortion. Any of you aware of that? Yeah. It doesn't feed the soul. It feels awful. It feels horrible. And so as we come to practice, what happens is we start looking within, and we start seeing clearly, which I'll say more about in a minute, but we start understanding that, oh, this mind of separation, it only speaks distortion. When I listen to it, if I really listen to what it's saying, it only speaks distortion. And so why would I want to be giving it my attention? Why would I want to be obeying it? Have any of you hit that point in practice? I hope again and again and again, where you access the chutzpah, the fire required to begin to reclaim your own authority. Raise your hand. That's what we're doing in Dharma practice. So it's about reclaiming the inner authority, the authority within. And when we get stuck, the next principle of relational practice is mindful inquiry and clear seeing. So it's about, as we're going along in life, certainly as we're engaging with one another, perhaps a button gets pushed, perhaps something gets triggered in us, instead of just believing it, okay, instead of just falling into it, we can gently inquire. So is what I'm being told right now by my mind, is it really true? Is this really so? And just that amount of space can help us to step back some and to actually see more clearly what's really happening. What's really happening. And so just pause as you're listening to my words and see if you can stay connected to the internal landscape while we engage. Just noticing how my words are reaching you, how what I'm sharing feels so for you or not. Really letting your own experience be your guide, okay? And I'm feeling a sense that I'd like to open up the space to hear from you more and to hear your questions and also to hear your reflections, because certainly a teaching in relational practice is that we learn so much from one another's experience. We learn that even though sometimes this mind tells us that it's just us, we're alone in what we're experiencing, just us going through this particular difficulty in practice, or whatever it is, we're actually far from alone. It's the human experience we're touching in with. Okay? And I could go further into some relational teachings, but I want to first really hear from you in the group and just open the space. And so I'll just say one thing, and you'll be the first person I call upon, and that's that oftentimes when we come to a gathering, certainly if we come to a party or even a yoga class, there's a sense of needing or wanting to be on, somehow needing or wanting to look good, or in these kinds of circles, look wise. Has anyone experienced that before? Yeah. I really encourage people as much as possible to just let that go. It's not something that serves in Sangha. It's not something that serves in the field of practice. Practice offers a pretty radical teaching to welcome every single part of us, and thus every single part of humanity, okay, into a field of acceptance. Every one of us carries all of it, every texture, every color, every emotion, all of it. And the Buddha taught that each and every one of us contains everything that's happened to all of humanity since before the beginning of time. That's a lot. So it's a lot of beauty and it's a lot of pain too. So I just offer that so we can, as much as possible, share ourselves as we are. Okay? Yeah, can you share your name?
It's Richard. I'm sorry, a little laryngitis. For deep listening, I'm wondering if you mean listening to the room, just listening to the moment, or somehow listening to yourself. And if you're listening to yourself, what is that?
Thank you.
Is there a difference?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the question is, can I speak more to deep listening? Okay? And I would invite you, just as I speak, to notice your experience of listening. So we either have the opportunity in any moment to listen shallowly, and that tends to mean I'm kind of just listening to superficial thought. It's going on and on and on and on. It's telling me its things, generally repeating a lot of the usual stuff, okay? And that would be shallow listening. Or I'm actually practicing awareness and letting myself drop more into the field of presence. I describe meditation as listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment. So it means that I'm staying attuned and connected within. I'm listening to the field of awareness. I'm also listening through the field of awareness, not just through the assessing mind. So one of the things I would hear could be the assessing mind, but I could also hear more deeply and more fully what's happening in this room. I could also hear more deeply and more fully what's happening within myself. Sometimes through the conditioned mind, we zero in on one little thing, like we'll get stuck on one thought or one pain or something like that. In awareness, we allow the field to open to a more spacious place, and we welcome it all as being part of it, but we're not zeroed in on one thing. Does that clarify a little bit?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and remind me your name.
My name is Ron.
Thanks.
I think when you were sharing that ability to love without fear, and I was beginning to grasp the intensity of your wisdom, I got a bit scared. I felt if I follow all this teaching, then I'll become a saint. And I don't think you can function in that capacity in this town.
So what I hear you saying is, you watched a little fear climb in just while we were here in this room together.
The world I live in is full of dualities.
Yes?
And disagreements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not transparent.
I'm going to suggest something.
Please.
Every teaching is full of nuance, and we want to be aware of how we take in, how we hear what's said, because it's easy, and I've certainly done this, especially in my early years of practice, hearing what a teacher says and then putting it through my own filter of conditioning right back into duality or right back into, oh, if I really practice that, then something scary will happen. I would just be aware of that filter, and I would suggest not so. I'm not inviting you into a level of sainthood that will disconnect you from the rest of the world. You're welcome to go there if you want.
What you are sharing is a very lovey-dovey world. We don't live that way.
Because we live in a world of such disconnect, such distortion right now, is that not even more reason why each and every one of us might want to consider showing up with a little more presence? Is it? So all I'm asking is for people to be aware. You have such a greater capacity than you know, such a greater capacity than you know, to bring the quality of presence that we learn on the meditation cushion, the stillness, some quality of stillness, the ability to see more clearly, okay? To listen more deeply, to be more attuned.
Do you ever compete in your life?
Hold on. We can talk about competition in a minute if you want. To be more attuned, to be more with ourselves, to be kinder to ourselves, and then to bring this quality of presence into the field of human relating. Folks, it's not rocket science, what I'm teaching here. It's an invitation, and it's an invitation that tends to scare people a little bit. How many of you felt just a little bit of fear arise even in the exercise I had you do of partnering perhaps with a stranger and maybe being a little vulnerable? Raise your hand. A lot of hands are going up in this room. What about maybe being together in that moment? You thought you were just coming in to meditate and turn within. Next thing you know, oh, human in front of me? And just having a moment of kind of silence or awkward empty space together. Anyone have that? Yeah, so if you're here for the day long yesterday, I make you gaze into each other's eyes. That's even scarier. So I'm just really curious about our capacity to help each other to remember who we really are, rather than kind of further the forgetting. Yeah?
Well, I think an amazing gift to live that way. All I'm struggling is it possible to live that way in every aspect?
Here's what's important about what you're sharing. The most unhelpful thing we can do in practice is to set up kind of a standard or ideal, like, here's how a perfect meditator should look, or here's how, and this is kind of what I was talking about before, hearing a teaching and then putting it through a filter in our mind. What Eden's saying is creating now this standard, right, for what's possible. Just be aware of that. Be aware of that. Yeah. I want to see, is there anyone on this side of the room? I saw a hand a few minutes ago. Is it still present? Yeah.
Well, he kind of reminded me that when you're in this nice mood and then you're driving down the street, somebody cuts in front of you, or you see somebody swearing at you on the street. How do you deal with that, right? So I think that's kind of what he meant. It can be a scary world sometimes, and we have to react, and we have to react to what we know. And what we know is survival. And
okay. So actually, we don't have to react. We don't ever have to react, but we do need to respond consciously and skillfully. Sometimes really quickly. Sometimes really fiercely. We need to respond consciously, and we need to respond skillfully. And if you've noticed, when you're not so present, when you're not so here, when you're not connected to yourself, how skillful are your responses? Yeah? Yeah. And then you get two people who aren't here, and it becomes more about I versus you than we. Yeah, you had a question.
Yes,
and remind me your name.
Yeah, because you were talking about what I heard you say about deep listening and being authentic. So when I think of being authentic, it's rather puzzling. I'm going to tell you a scenario that happened. Me and my wife.
I knew you were going to.
Me and my wife have a good. This is what I'm really thinking about. This is authentic. To me, it is. Me and my wife have a good friend who got divorced from her husband, and they're in the throes of a divorce, and they're really angry at each other. And she said, "I'm taking my two children who are already feeling the emotional brunt of this divorce to Italy, she sent it to me and my wife a text. Don't tell the husband if he asks about it. Now they're already overeating and the kids are anxiety and having problems at school from separation. And I thought, that's really damaging to the child. You know, take these 2 children for a month to Italy and not tell the father. And so I says to my wife, you have an ethical duty to tell, I think you have an ethical duty to tell this woman that this is going to be, this is going to impact the children, to maybe think about it. And so I'm thinking, that's being authentic. And on the other hand, it sure ain't deep listening, right? So I don't know what that looks like in terms of authenticity. Some people might say, wow, that's really being pushy, or that's saying, like about a month ago, my wife said, you're acting like an a-hole or something like that. And I went, wow, I appreciate you saying that. I needed to hear that. So when is it, I like to hear people say that to me, right? Something like confront me with what their truth is. But some people might say, that's really like unkind behavior.
Okay.
So what is authenticity, unless it's like, I'm really feeling sad, or I'm lonely, but in normal life sometimes we do make judgments, and to speak our mind may hurt somebody or shake somebody up.
So just to pause for a moment, and how many people who are present tonight have some kind of related conflict you've either witnessed or experienced recently? Yeah? That it can get really messy, the human field, not? So especially when we're trained to come from kind of an I versus you mentality instead of more of a we place, the final principle for relational mindfulness is compassionate action. And we get very confused about compassion in practice because we tend to sometimes think it always looks soft and pink and gentle. Not so. We also sometimes think of it as like an idea, like what would the Buddha do in this situation? And if only I was deeper in my practice, then I could do. Or we think of it as the right thing versus the wrong thing. It's none of that. I don't hear that you weren't deep listening in that situation. Deep listening means attending within, noticing the full range of our experience as we're taking something in, certainly as we're navigating a conflict, as we're listening to what's going on with someone else. I introduce you to the notion of pausing more. We pause, okay? So we cannot jump into reactivity, though we do sometimes. So we cannot jump into assumptions. So we cannot just fall for what the mind of separation is telling us, but so we can sit with what's going on. And then through listening, that's how we access compassionate action. It only comes from in here. It looks different in every situation. There is no template. I can't tell you what to do in that situation, and I wouldn't want to here. I would want you to look within and see, does this feel, a really good question is, does this feel like what is best for all in this situation? Or is this just what I want right now? Or what I want them to know right now? Is this best for all? And if you feel genuinely, then it is. That's authentic. That's your authentic response. You with me?
Yeah.
So it looks different in every situation. We get really confused when we think of compassion only as kind of soft and pink. Sometimes it is. Sometimes when you look at how would love respond in this situation, okay? Or what is best for all here? It is about gentleness and not getting in the way and something very, very soft. Sometimes it's about setting a fierce boundary. It's about hard compassion. So it can look many different ways, but we know it's compassionate because we feel deep compassion inside when we drop into that place. Is that making sense to people? Yeah. Thank you. Your name?
Edward. I'm sitting here and listening, and it's beautiful things. And something arises that in life we're all different. We're born differently, we live our lives differently, duration and work and different relationships, meditation, not meditation. But somehow we expect death to be the same for all, for the same. We're born differently, we live our life different, but death is the same. Abyss, darkness, non-existence. So I just want to see a reflection. is that expectations or that the norm understanding of it is something that makes sense? It's here we are different, but here we expect everyone is.
So it sounds to me like you're making an observation that even though you witness human beings kind of seeing diversity of so many different human forms, many people have a set expectation of what death looks like, that it's the same for everyone?
Well, it seemed like it's very much whatever I read, whatever I heard, death is, well, that's what it is. It's the end of it all.
I would invite you to sit with that, and I'll just would share that personally, working with people of so many different cultures and so many different religious traditions, my experience is that there are many different diverse perceptions of what death is and how we transition. And so I would just invite you to sit with where that question's coming from a bit. Yeah? I saw a hand over here. Can you share your name?
My name's Nina. I was thinking, or I'd love for you to maybe speak a little bit more about compassionate action within the context of activism, because we are kind of in a turmoil. I think that a lot of us are very aware of, and I think it can be very challenging for us to speak in a way that is firm yet kind, and having, kind of that question of, okay, what is, it can be a very confusing question, I think, at times to see, okay, what is the good for all?
Yes.
When it seems like such extremes, right?
Yeah, thank you. And I would really actually invite you to check out this book, because I come from a family of activists, and my practice and activism have always been intertwined. I've always just naturally seen my meditation practice is part of my expression as being a change agent here. I believe this is so for all of us, because it's not that we're doing our separate practice and it's just impacting us. We're practicing on behalf of the whole. We're making changes. We're being invited to let go of personal and collective conditioning. It's impactful. And in terms of what you're talking about, something incredible is happening right now, where because of how dark and tumultuous things have become, and because of how much has come to the surface, which used to be just a little bit underneath the surface, more people, and certainly more meditators, are asking the question of, how do I meet this? All that's happening in the world at large from compassion. What does that feel like, and what does that look like? And again, there is no Band-Aid response, but a few things that I would name that are really important. Number one, these principles for relational mindfulness, they initially inspired me because of my background in activism, because I got tired of witnessing well-intentioned people with incredible visions in the world for what we could create together, what we could change, what we could do, this nonprofit work, that idea, butting heads and completely flailing, or at least suffering in the process, because they did not know how to relate consciously with one another. You with me?
Yes.
Because of people were seeing too much from an I versus you lens. People were getting stuck in divisiveness, in burnout, in not really knowing how to listen. Essentially, people are getting stuck in ego. One of the things we do in this practice is we pay more attention to our hidden egoic agendas as we engage with one another. How often am I with another person, but instead of being fully here and with you, which isn't that difficult, folks, and which feels delicious. It's what we all want, connection. Instead of that, I'm kind of choosing this subsurface agenda of I want to be liked, I want to be right, I want approval, I want to look good, I want, you know what I mean, by hidden agendas? And we learn to, just as our meditation practice, just like when we're on the ocean, see those and drop them, because they're not true for us. They're not actually who we are. And so this work, and I also teach change agents this work specifically, start a retreat next week in Santa Cruz that is for this, relational mindfulness for the sake of the greater good, for our work as change agents. It's incredibly effective in helping us to attend more fully within to the breadth and depth of feeling that everything happening in the world stirs up for us. Each and every one of us has so much grief to be with. And there's so many ways that we can turn away from that grief. And the alternative is to allow that grief to be kind of a raft that takes us deeper into truth, and certainly deeper into conscious response. Wow, we are inherently connected. Each time I hear of one of these atrocities on the news, when I really let myself be open and permeable, it hits me here, like that. Not subtly, not just a little bit, here, like that. And I could certainly continue turning away from all of those things, or I can realize that actually, as a human being, my sensitivity is my ultimate strength. It's a shared strength, and it's a strength that erases the delusion of power over and points us instead to power with. Yeah? And so compassionate action, I would suggest, is always nonviolent in some form, but it can be really, really powerful, or it can be really, really subtle. It can be a really, really loud voice. It can be silence. But it's about listening from a deeper place, like a place beyond the reactive mind, right? And beyond the me, my little bubble mind, to what actually serves here. What actually serves here. Is that helpful a bit?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. These are really big times, and I would suggest really important times to be supporting one another in feeling our grief, not turning away from it, feeling our grief, even if we don't think it's there, and allowing that grief to be transformed into compassionate action. Okay, into compassionate action. So maybe one more question. Yeah.
Carol, so I wondered, can this practice help you with arguing? Because I find myself, getting into arguments with people when I don't even want to, but there I am. And how do I stop that?
Yeah, of course. Well, first you need to bring more awareness to it. When you're getting caught in arguments, who's here? What parts of you are arising? What's getting triggered in you? Okay, so this is where mindful inquiry and investigation comes in. So you can actually see, I must be showing up kind of a bit flammable to the relational field if I'm getting lit on fire this often, right? And another really important piece is not taking personally. On the meditation cushion, we learn how to not take personally. And we also learn this mind of separation that I've talked about tonight. You don't have to take it personally. It's not. It's a human shared experience, not personal to you. Taking it personally just makes us kind of feel bad about it or something, or try to fight it. So this evening I went over just some of the principles. There are 9, and we talked about half of them because I didn't want to overwhelm you, and I had a sense that you were just starting to get a little overwhelmed, like feeling that my hope is that I've reminded you and helped to open a bit more curiosity and perhaps passion about what's possible. We sit on the cushion not to find some island of peace to hold on to. Try to hold on to it, folks. Good luck. We practice on the cushion so that we can cultivate a quality of presence that we can then take out into every aspect of our life. Life is our meditation. We're going to die one day. So we have a short period of time here to be present for and to show up for. Do you want to show up in truth as you are, or kind of believing distortion? Yeah? And one of the things that I talk about in the first chapter of the book is just that awareness. Because we all know that it's really intense being human. The awareness of the importance of vulnerability, of turning towards our sensitive nature. So that as kids, if our parents had actually said to us when we were really young, welcome to this experience called life. You're going to experience more beauty, more joy than you could ever imagine. And you are going to experience more pain and suffering than you could ever imagine. So welcome to this thing called life. Let's give you the tools to meet all that is going to unfold with presence with resilience, with trust in yourself, with love. That would have been a very different orientation. You certainly would have perhaps spent less time trying to turn away from what's uncomfortable and what's difficult. It's here. It's part of the game. So I'd like to invite everyone to close your eyes for a minute. Take in a couple of deep breaths. Just appreciating yourself for being here tonight, okay? Seeing if there's one quality that you were reminded of this evening that you want to take into the rest of your night, perhaps. Interconnection. Perhaps peace. Kindness. For any of you who would like to go deeper in practice with me, you can find offerings posted on the board and also on my website, deborah.tull.com. You might check out this book, Relational Mindfulness, a handbook for deepening our connection with ourself, each other, and our planet. Thank you, everyone. And I'll just offer a reminder about Donna, generosity practice. Just that the teachers who come here each week come from willingness of their own heart, generosity of the heart, and are really grateful for your generosity, for your Donna. So you can make a donation as you exit. And there's a bowl out for that, I believe, right?
We also take cards.
Okay. And there's postcards out for one of my next retreats is with Dave Smith, who many of you know, up at Land of Medicine Buddha. And we have another in Colorado in November, so join us.
Okay. Thank you.